On August 26, 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act. This act gave Japanese Americans a formal apology and redress for forced evacuation and internment during World War II. It was the culmination of decades of struggle in the community, through the courts, and finally past layers of government. Community protest of the internment had begun shortly after Executive Order 9066 was enacted. Japanese Americans used the American court system to fight the battle. 4 of the cases would eventually reach the Supreme Court, but take decades to resolve. By the end of 1946, all the relocation camps had been closed, and Japanese Americans had resumed their lives. Upon their return home, many found their farms, businesses, and material goods gone, either stolen or confiscated. Several tried to sue the government to regain their property.
A number of them came to me to sue the governmental agencies to try to recover their property. I did bring suit against them, but the government refused to relinquish whatever jewelry or treasures they had taken from the Japanese people.
Congress passed the Evacuation Claims Act in 1948, giving internees 2 years to file claims against the government for damages or property lost due to the evacuation. Japanese Americans received pennies on the dollar, if anything, for their lost property. In the years that followed, a grassroots movement began in the Japanese American communities for redress and reparation. Some organizations, such as the Japanese American Citizens League and Nisei veterans groups, supported the movement.
One thing I'd like to say on the redress, the younger generation, the third generation, went out there and they fought the battle for us Nisei. I'll be first to admit it. I appreciate what they did, how they went out there and really fought the battle to get the redress.
In 1970, Edison Uno and others introduced a resolution at the JACL National Convention to seek compensation from the government for the internment. Although it doesn't pass, this resolution is sometimes credited as the beginning of the redress movement. Meanwhile, the grassroots organizations continued their fight and began to gain momentum. Legislators and the courts began to pay attention. President Gerald Ford signed an American Promise in 1976, which formally rescinded Executive Order 9066 but provided no apology. Senator Daniel Inouye introduced a proposal in 1980 to Congress to establish a commission on wartime relocation and internment of civilians to review the impact of 9066 on Japanese Americans. The commission issued a report, Personal Justice Denied, concluding that the forced evacuation and internment were not justified by military necessity, and the decisions were based on race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. On August 10, 1988, Japanese American leaders, including Senator Daniel Inouye, proudly watched as President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, providing a presidential apology and appropriating $1.25 billion for reparations of $20,000 each to evacuees of Japanese ancestry who lost liberty or property. The oldest living Issei finally received the first reparation check and apology. He was 107 years old. Payments and letters continued to be sent out for the next 10 years to other survivors.